tell me, but I'm happy to be with you this morning here in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I'm very excited to have you here. I think that you're somebody that I've admired for a long time and really appreciated their work as a player. So it's really exciting to have you here.
It's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
All right. So if you want to introduce yourself a little bit and kind of let the listeners know your background and kind of what you do.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Tom Bates. I am a failed soccer player from England. Let's get that one out there straight away. I didn't make it at the highest level, but still fell in love with the game. Continued my passion to become a coach. I'd licensed coach here in England. And my transition has really gone from coaching, academy, center of excellence, and professional soccer players here in England to retrain as a performance psychologist, working with Premier League athletes and championship players, along with the Team GB, Tokyo 2021 games that I've just got back from, helping the British swimming team to perform at their best when it matters the most. My work as a performance psychologist has extended into education and business settings over the last 5 years. And I'm currently the director of my own independent consultancy, having left professional soccer full time, Tom Bates Coaching Limited. And I work with athletes and teams and coaches and managers across different sports all around the world. My job as a sports psychologist, performance psychologist, is to help athletes, teams, coaches, managers perform at their best. So understand that the way that we think affects the way that we feel, and the way that we feel defines performance. And those emotional states that we create for ourselves are a critical part of really being at our best, of unleashing our full potential in the competitive arena.
What would be your advice when you're looking to program that positive self-talk, but say, things aren't working out? Because in moments where things don't go your way, it's very easy to be negative and have that mindset. But when you have worked on that self-talk to keep you positive in those moments, it can be a huge game changer. So what would be your advice on that?
First of all, my favorite book says death and life is in the tongue. Death and life is in the tongue. The words that we choose to use, both internally, so cognitively, the self-talk that words say and speak out loud, those words have power, emotional power, energetic power. And science is starting now to reach a point where we can unequivocally prove that there is a frequency, a vibration, an energy. There is a neurological reaction in the brain to certain words that are recognized as empowering or inspiring or deflating. Words of self-doubt. I can't do this. I'm not sure whether I have the potential to do this. This is a big game today. Am I ready? ? So there are hormonal differences, changes that take place. We know that, right? For the sake of keeping it simple, there are happy hormones that get released, such as oxytocin, serotonin. Those hormones are released when we focus our energy and attention on certain phrases, certain words. Because really what it's about ourselves, most importantly, self-change, how we see and experience the world, how we see and experience ourselves. Athletes that I work with, we run through a self-talk script before competitive moments, before matches, before race day, because focus our attention on the things that we believe about ourselves, the things that we choose to say about ourselves. So a quick story. I was working with a player called Sam Vokes, and Sam was a soccer player who played for AFC Bournemouth before being transformed and catapulting into the English Premier League. And he was on match day. So one of the things that I asked him to do is write out a phrase that he believed to be true about himself, a positive phrase, a positive reinforcing phrase known as an affirmation. And Sam wrote out instinctively, anything is possible, even myself. To sleep at night, he would read this phrase 3 times. Something magical started to happen whilst he was reading this phrase to himself. As he was reading it in the morning and the evening, not only did he start to feel better about himself, about match day, about training, but he also started to see pictures in his mind. He was a striker, of him scoring goals from all sorts of different angles, headed goals, volleyed goals, cutback goals, tap-ins, penalties. He started to see himself playing for Manchester United Football Club instead of AFC Bournemouth. And of course, anyone that knows Sam's career at this point in my story says, well, hold a minute, Tom. Sam didn't go on to play for Manchester United, so what's the point in the story? See, the thing is, it's not that he didn't get to play for Manchester United sides using work and empowering that were true for him, became his reality, shaped his emotional state, and created a mindset of positive empowerment instead of a self-talk and inner voice that was of doubt, you see? Because it's not true that elite performers, it's not true that anyone really, Calvin, performs in the absence of fear or doubt or stress or worry or frustration. All of us experience those things. Even the athletes that I've worked with at the very highest level will report to me that at certain times, certain little whispers of doubt enter their minds. But it's not about performing in the absence of those things. It's about how we respond, reframe, recharge, and push back to a degree to realign our focus, energy, and attention. Champions don't perform in the absence of voices of doubt or self-talk. They respond to the doubts. They've trained themselves to respond to the moments of doubt with courage in action, in how they think, with self-talk being one of them, but also what they do. Courage in action. The action that they take in the face of the doubts that they experience. And that's really one of the things that I've found to be a defining aspect of athletes that go on to perform at the highest level.
That's actually very, very interesting. And especially it's, for me, always exciting when I feel like I can kind of keep learning new things. And I have to say, I 100% agree with you. As a player, being able to have that in my arsenal of tools to use. So one other thing that I'm really interested in, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is, for me, again, as a player, I think visualization has been such a big part of my performance, especially as a goalkeeper, and picturing myself like making saves and playing, a decent ball. How well or how important is visualization leading up and into a game?
Kelvin, as you rightly say, it's such a wonderful question, because we're at a stage now where I think there's no doubt. There used to be a doubt over this sort of intangible mental skill, training skill, visualization. What is it? Does it really impact us? Can it really help performance? But I think, again, now we've reached a stage where science has proved beyond all doubt that, for example, 2/3 of the brain's activity when we visualize very well is the same as when we perform the physical action for real. The same cortical mapping, the same neurological processes, the same areas of the brain that are responsible for executive elite movement, if you like, can be activated through a very efficient visualization exercise. And so it's not a question of whether or not visualization can help now. It is a scientific fact, unequivocally proven beyond all doubt. So there is the hard science, there's the neurology, facts backing up why visualization is so important. But if I was to talk to you about a more anecdotal sort of experiential reference, visualization has become one of the central mental skills training techniques that I use with all of my athletes who are performing at the very highest level in the world. And even the children that I coach sometimes at grassroots level, all the way down to, these 6 and 7-year-old children who are just a pure joy to be around, by the way, as I'm sure you know if you coach yourself. The power of visualization is one of the tools that helps us direct our energy and attention on the things that we wish to bring about in our lives and in our performances. There's a wonderful book called The Secret. There's also now a DVD. I'm sure you've heard of it. There's a quote in that book and in that DVD that says, if you can see it in your mind, you're going to hold it in your hand. If you can see it in your mind, you're going to hold it in your hand. One of the fun exercises that I get to do with the athletes is I say, especially if they drive these really flashy, fast cars, I say to them, wow, how did you, where did you first see that car? They say, oh, I saw it in a magazine or I saw it online or whatever. I said, all right, interesting. Before you bought that car, between the time you first saw the car and between the time you actually purchased it, did you start to see it around more? They said, yeah, it's a funny thing you should say that. I saw it at the supermarket. I saw it at the traffic lights. I saw it parked down my road, not in the same color that I want, but yeah, the same model. And I said, how interesting. Is it the case that the car manufacturer just sprinkled these cars all around where you were going to be and just followed you around, in those 6 weeks before you bought the car? And of course, the answer is absolutely not. What is happening is their attention and awareness of this car has been increased. And so they are literally focusing on and seeing more of what they look for. What we focus on, we get more of. Okay. So visualization, when we really think about it, everything, if we go on a broader perspective, everything that we see in the world, to the design of houses, to the clothes that we wear, to the shoes on our feet, to the televisions that are in our houses, to the colors on the wall, before those things came about, they existed in thought form, in the imagination of the creator, in the imagination of the designer. So if we think about it, everything that now exists was once first a thought. It was in the imagination. Someone had the creativity to intend to bring it about and took action to make it. So really, as human in the sports arena, what we know is, for sure, if I want to improve a certain aspect of my game and it's not yet a physical reality, I must first see it in my mind and conceive and imagine my capacity to perform that skill or that technique or the execution of that movement. And for sure, if we're able to start there, that is the foundation. That is the very foundation. That's the very first step. To conceive it in your mind and to believe that it is possible is the foundation of any first winning journey. It's the first step in any winning journey. So visualization is a very powerful scientific tool, but it's also something that is can benefit us, not just in sports performance, but in every area of our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is such an important topic. And I think it's so important for athletes and human beings to hear, just because it plays such an important role. And I've seen it play a difference in my career. And something else that I'm really interested in hearing you talk about is I'm currently on trial with a professional club in the United States. And one thing that I've seen is that players who have the ability to see failure as more of a stepping stone or a part of the process end up having more success in the game than people who view failure as sort of a final kind of, this is it, a closed door in their face. So my question to you is, how or what advice would you give to people who, encounter some setbacks and failure along the way? Because I've realized how important it is and how you process that and what meaning you give to that.
Calvin, fantastic phrase that you just said. How you give meaning to that. And that's how we give meaning. See, it's not things themselves that cause us trouble, right? It's what we associate them to mean. It's the purpose that we give it. Things don't cause us trouble. It's how we think about those things that causes us the trouble. So failure is fantastic. it's fantastic because really failure is feedback. That's really all it is. It's just feedback. If we were to learn from a very early age that failure is something that is actually quite, it contains the ingredients, the very ingredients for us to be better in every way. But a lot of fear is associated with that word failure, because we're taught from a very early age, be number one, get there first, don't be last, get good grades in school. When you compete in soccer or sport, no one wants to be last. If you come last, you're no good. A lot of children growing up have dropped out of sport because of how they've seen, their failure at trials and I mean, even you yourself right now have got a wonderful opportunity, because at certain stages, there'll be things I'm sure that in yourself, you could have done a little bit better in that trial. Mm-hmm. And if you are able to see those things as opportunities, not defining aspects, There's a wonderful poem by Fred D. Jarvis. I'm going to try to paraphrase because I haven't got it in front of me, but I'm going to try and recall it from memory. It says, friends, failure is not final. God sometimes uses failure to make us higher go. We all at times have failure. It's not how far we fall, but how we get up after that counts the most of all. I love that poem. Failure is not final. Failure is really just feedback. So if we're able to see it in that way, then we give ourselves the opportunity to learn, grow, and develop. But if we do see it as something that's final and is a mark of our fixed talent, that's one of the reasons why kids don't really want to fail, because they're told that they're very talented. Anytime they succeed, the feedback that they get is, wow, you're so skillful. You're naturally talented. You're just blessed with this talent. And when we frame it like that, we're framing it unknowingly with something that's very fixed. Either you've got it or you haven't. And that's simply not true. It's a developmental, ongoing process. But if I'm someone that thinks, if I fail, then people are going to think that I'm not so talented, then I'm never going to get out there again and try, because I'll just play safe. I'll just do, live within that limitation. But if I'm someone, on the other hand, that believes that even if I fail, I'm still growing, then I'm likely to take more risks. I'm likely to, when I go through setbacks, overcome them quicker, because of what you just said, Calvin, the meaning that we give the failure that we experience. And that's really at the heart of it.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing, because like I said, one thing that I've really noticed, especially with people such as yourself and other people that I've interviewed, is people that have found success not only in the sport but in life have that big resistance to failure. And I've always found that very, very interesting. And I have to ask, when you're working with these professional athletes in the Premier League and Championship and so forth, is there anything in terms of their mental skills that you've noticed the difference between athletes that really, really set them apart? And if so, what would they be?
Yeah, it's a very, very good. I mean, there are many traits that those that I mean, I'm let's say, okay, I'll pick an athlete that's the highest performer that I've ever worked with or known. Triple Olympic champion, gold medal, defending European champion, Commonwealth champion, British champion. His name is Adam Peaty. He competes in the 100-meter breaststroke, just achieved back-to-back golds in Tokyo, and became the first ever British swimmer to do that in the history of the sport. He is an extreme outlier. He is the fiercest competitor. He's really a gladiator in the sport that he competes in, and his mindset is very unique. So if I use him as an example, he is what I would deem healthily obsessed. He has a healthy obsession for getting better. I mean, there is really none like him that I've encountered. But I think he said a phrase to me one day, because I asked him the same question, believe it or not: what makes you different to all of the others? What would you say about yourself? And it was fascinating because we were in the car, just driving together, and he said that I would prefer to die than let anyone beat me. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, my goodness, that is, I mean, if someone would prefer to die than lose, mm-hmm. We're not really talking about a level of motivation going up and down. And I mean, if that's at the heart, if that's fueling the engine in the furnace, that's the fire that's burning. It's really the difference between motivation and commitment is motivation goes high and low sometimes, right? Sometimes we feel motivated to do something, sometimes we don't. But if you're committed like that, I mean, that's really what he's talking about, is a total commitment to the cause. If that's your level of commitment never wavers. So that means that when he doesn't feel so good, you can probably tell from my voice right now, I've got a bit of a cold here. So, you know, when athletes get colds and when they don't feel necessarily at their best, it doesn't matter, because that is the cause. That's the purpose. That's the meaning. That's the why. I am not prepared to let anybody beat me. So that's the first one. He's just ruthless. He's ruthless. I think one of the things that also makes him different is that constant pursuit of better. He's just so curious about ways to improve. He studies not just other athletes in swimming, but he studies business people. He studies coaches. He studies, NASA, studies the space program, how astronauts train. He's trained with the military, the Royal Marines down here, and spent some time on a course. He's jumping out of planes. He's sleeping on the hills in the midnight in the pouring rain with just, his kit. And he's not afraid to push himself far outside of his comfort zone in order to be better. And certainly there are times when he's failed. The interesting thing about him is that he wasn't very good when he was younger, 13, 14. He was nowhere near the top rankings. So again, from our previous point, he didn't let those failures define his future. His response to those failures defined his future. And every single day, he's constantly pushing himself outside of his comfort zone. I don't know whether you guys know it. There's a show called Strictly Come Dancing here in England. And different famous people are paired up with dancers, professional dancers. And it's a TV show. He couldn't dance at all before he went on the show, right? After the Olympics. And he's in the studio with his trainer every hour of the day. He's still in the competition right now. And I said, does it come naturally to you? He said, absolutely not. I've got two left feet. Normally in the pool, not on my feet. But, that's an example, right, of who he is and how he lives his life. So there's a few there.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And that's really interesting to hear. And I think a lot of people will be able to take away some important things that you said there. And another thing that I'm really interested to hear your point on, and I've heard you talk about a little bit before in other videos, goal setting, especially for somebody, athletes and people in general, being able to understand the process of setting goals in the right way, to where you don't set a goal that maybe right now is out of reach, but you understand the steps and the process it takes. What advice would you give to people that, are looking to reach the next step of their life, whatever it may be? What would be the process of setting goals in the correct way to build momentum and confidence and kind of get that engine going?
It's a wonderful question. I think, first of all, we all need goals, every single one of us, even if we're not in sport, but daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, yearly goals. And, when we break it down in psychology, there's something called the goal orientation, process, performance, and outcome goals. One of the pitfalls is that we set ourselves an outcome goal, win or lose. And if we lose, then we failed. We didn't achieve our goal. But if I measure my self-worth just by the outcome, then it's likely that I'm setting myself up really to feel bad. So it's very important that we take an outcome goal. Yes, if we want to win the league, for example, That's our outcome goal. You break that down and you go backwards and you say, what are the processes that need to be in place? What are the performance goals that we need to set up for us to achieve? Then you start to build a momentum. If a process goal is, right, 3 times a week, I want to go for a run for 25 minutes, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, whatever, 3 times a week. And the process of being disciplined, first of all, to commit to that small process goal. And then the performance goal is, well, I want to be able to feel like I'm running full of energy. Notice that I don't say a time. There's no time in that run. It's, can I commit to 3 times a week? And I want to be able to feel good running full of energy, to focus. Then the outcome goal might be, okay, after 4 weeks of this, I want to run under this time. So one of the pitfalls, Calvin, is that we set ourselves up to feel bad because we don't break the goal down. We just set outcome goals without really thinking about the process. And then if we start to achieve the process goals, I start to feel good because I've done something. I've achieved the stepping stones towards that outcome that I'm seeking. The other thing is that we don't really win on a Saturday. We don't just turn up and win on a Saturday. We win on a Saturday because we win in training Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so we win every day. Can I win in being on time to the training pitch? Can I win by being the last one off? Can I win by studying my game on the analysis, even if it's just a short video of the practice or whatever? If you're at a professional club, you're likely to have an analyst and you can see it on the big monitors, etc. But can I win with my behaviors? And that's what I mean. Goals, daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals. Can I have a goal to set my alarm for 6 a.m. from Monday to Friday, 6 weeks straight, and get up at 6 a.m.? First of all, can I, and people laugh at this, but, can I make my bed? Can I take responsibility for the simple behaviors that lead to success? Because in the end, Calvin, what starts to happen is once we commit to those processes and performances, the goals, the outcomes that we seek, they seek us. The wins come to us. We don't have to strive after them. Because all of a sudden you wake up 6 months down the line and you've retained that discipline of achieving those process goals and performance goals. And all of a sudden you're saying, I scored 3 goals today in the game. As opposed to saying, I want to score 3 goals without any of that work underneath it. That's just wishful thinking, right? It's one of the failings of goal setting process. But I think the most important thing that I would say, if you really want to break it down in any goal setting process, is number one, there's a wonderful quote by Henry Ford, and it goes like this: whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you'll be right. Whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you'll be right. So the first step is we have to believe that it's possible. The second step is consistent, everyday courage in action. We have to do something about what it is that we want to achieve. When you break it down, it's really all about time and choice. How do we use the time that we've got? How do we choose to use the time that we've got available to us? It's either going to make us be better or it's not. It's really that simple. Is what I'm doing right now going to make me better? If not, do not do it.
Yeah.
If it is, great, carry on.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important for people to hear. And it was interesting that you kind of talked about how it's really how you spend your time. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this philosopher called Seneca, but he has this book that I'm currently reading about basically kind of what you were talking about, like using time in the right way and being able to realize that how you spend your time is who you are, and who you are defines kind of what you do.
Beautiful.
So very, very interesting. And so one thing I would like to hear as well is Especially even for me sometimes, as a football or soccer player that's starting to get into the lower levels of profession of the game, I realized that it's very important to be able to separate performance from self-worth, or even especially when you're setting a goal, being able kind of like we talked about, being like, all right, I'm not going to set out and, you know, sign a contract tomorrow, but what are the steps, like the performances that I need to do to eventually get that over time? So what advice would you give to athletes and people that, how do you separate the performance from your self-worth?
Well, first of all, the value that we have to the world, for the world, is we are worthwhile just because of who we are. So fundamentally, your self-worth, the worth that you have, the value that you have as a human being, is great, regardless of the success that we achieve on the pitch. And that self-worth, that self-efficacy is fundamentally different from the confidence that I have in myself to perform. I mean, inextricably, they're linked in different ways, but to break it down, I have two simple ideas. Number one, there is a performance self and there is a real self. And the real self, it's a little bit like one of my great teachers, Mr. Bill Beswick. He taught me many, many years ago, used an analogy of like Superman and Clark Kent, of the real self and the performance self. Clark Kent is working at the Daily Planet with Lewis Lane. In his job, he's a journalist. He's typing away and getting the stories. His senses are activated. He knows there's some baddies out there in the world, and he jumps into the phone booth and puts on the cape, flies out, transforms into Superman, saves the world. Performer self. Comes back, takes the cape off, suit back on, glasses on, back to Clark Kent, real self. As performers, when we cross the white line, we have to be able to step into the performer self. And the traits of the performer self are sometimes very different from the real self. To get the best from ourselves, we may have to be more assertive, more aggressive, more resilient, much more vocal than we would be if we were just our real selves. So the real self, the Clark Kent version of ourselves, if you like, we have a worth to the world which far, in many ways, supersedes athletic success. When we, for example, one of the players that I'm working with at the minute competes in the Premier League. No one would know this about him, but he gave a large sum of money to a school in order to improve their facilities. And he purposefully didn't ask the school to mention him in the press, in the media. And the reason for that is because it's connected to who he believes he really is in this world, his identity, to do good, to help others. So our identity, our vision of who we are, if I believe that who I am is a professional footballer, okay, that's who I am. If I mistake who I am as just a professional footballer, anytime I win, I'm going to feel great. Anytime I lose, I'm going to feel bad. If I retire and the person that I think that I am is a professional footballer only, then who am I when I'm not that professional footballer? And we start to go a little bit deeper and realize that actually there are some illusions of the ego that exist here. I don't know how deep you want to go on this, but since we're going down this route, there are 5 key illusions of the ego. Dr. Wayne Dyer is a wonderful, I've followed him for many years. He's passed on now, but he says there are illusions of the ego. And this is very heavily tied into self-worth, identity, and confidence, and the difference between performer self, real self. He says the ego likes to tell us, I am what I have. I am what I have. I am the flashy pair of boots that I've got. I am the fantastic fast car with twin engine or whatever it is, double exhaust, right? I am that which I have. I am what I have. Second illusion of the ego. I am what I do. I am the superstar striker. I am the managing director of. I am the, right? And so on and so forth. That's an illusion. Third one, big one. I am what other people think of me. Not what I think of me. The ego says, I am what other people judge me to be. And this is a huge one right now, especially with the development of social media. However many likes that I get, if I get a certain number of likes, I can feel good about myself. Why? Because it's the illusion of the ego. I am what other people think of me. I am what the fans think. I am what the media writes about me. I am what the manager says. It's the fourth one. I am separate from others. It's not true. We're all human beings with human needs. We all have certain doubts and fears and worries at certain stages, right? We're not separate from anyone. We're connected with the same human needs. And the fifth one is really depends on your spiritual disposition. But the fifth one says, I'm separate from God. For me, I personally don't believe that. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. So, but if we were to take the first three, connect your question back to self-worth as a performer, as a person. Clearly, if you are what you have, who are you when you don't have those things? If you are what you do, who are you when you don't do those things? If you are what other people think of you, then our self-worth, our self-efficacy, our confidence will always be dependent upon other people's judgments, which is something that we have no control over whatsoever. There's a wonderful phrase, says some people will hate you, some people will love you, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you. I love that.
Yeah.
So, there's a few things there, Calvin. I probably went off in different tangents, so apologies.
No. I am, trust me, that stuff is always very fascinating to me. I've always been interested in understanding, the ego and the human brain. And I think, one thing that I've certainly realized is when it's funny, when I was younger, I used to think that whether I sign a pro contract or not is the most important thing in my life. And if I don't sign that pro contract, then I'm a failure. But as I've started to go through that journey, I realized who I've become, the people I've met, the experiences I've had, the places I've traveled are far more important than the end goal. And I, that journey has really showed me how beautiful life is, in the failures and the successes, and all those things. I realized that, life is made in the journey, not the destination. So I think that's really cool to hear that from you.
I love that, Kelvin. Absolutely. And it's so true. Because if we think about it, who you are now, based on the journey that you've been on and the experiences and the people that you've interacted with, is a far greater version of yourself than you previously were. And yet it was formed from the choice of pursuing your goal with courage and action. Despite the physical evidence of knowing that it would be possible, you constantly pursued that goal with an open heart, an open mind, with the courage. Success really, if we were to define success, to me, Calvin, that journey you've just described for yourself is far greater than the success of getting a contract or not. That success, because there's a famous credit belongs to the man who is in the arena. Theodore Roosevelt, who's in the arena, whose face is marred by the dust and sweat and blood, and who at worst knows the misery of defeat, but who at best, do you remember this one?
Yes.
Can say that his place will never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat. It's a we have that printed up at Sheffield Wednesday Football Club. We have to choose to be in the arena in life, not to be in the stands. Be in the arena so that our place will never be with those cold and timid souls who never know the feeling of courage despite the outcome. That's really what success is to me.
Absolutely. And I could not agree more. It's really cool to hear you say that, because that's something that you know, that I've learned, you know, throughout my journey. I've found it so interesting. And there's been so many times, especially as you know, is when you're trying to, you know, pursue the, you know, goal of becoming a professional athlete, being in that arena, there's a lot of setbacks. There's a lot of, you know, unknowns, but that ability to be like, this is my goal, and no matter what, I'm going to go through it is so important. So one of the last things I want to kind of talk about, I don't want to take up too much of your time. If you
Very welcome.
To talk about, kind of leave off here on like some things people can take away from more, is when you talk about a winning mindset, if you were going to give 3 key components to developing that and what you've seen in that, what would those 3 key characteristics be?
Well, firstly, we have to believe that it's possible. Not fundamentally, if we strip it all back, we must have the belief. You could say faith. The faith. The Bible says that faith is to be sure of what we cannot see, but to be certain of what we hope for. And really, when we talk about belief to me, if I was to define it, would be that we are capable, that we are worthy, that it is possible. Just that it's possible, that it can be done. That is really the foundation of a winning mindset. We have to believe. It's at the core. Because if I don't really, truly, honestly, authentically, deep down inside of myself, believe that I can, then it's almost certain that I won't. I'll just go through the motions. And even if I perform at the very highest level, even if I do quite well at the highest level, but I still really, truly don't believe that it's possible for me, then, you know, Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you'll be right. So at the core of a winning mindset is the self-belief. The second one I would say is what I call courage in action. We have to consistently bring ourselves to take action, to step forwards in the direction of our goal, despite the circumstances, despite the failures, despite the setbacks, despite the criticism, despite the difficulties. We have to keep moving forwards with courage in action. It will not be easy. It will not be fluid and fluent. It will not be smooth. We have to step forwards with courage in action. And probably the third one is, off the back of that, is that it's not the setback. It's not the, in quote, failure. It's not the difficulty which defines our future direction. It is our response. It is our choice. It is our attitude. It is how we respond to life's challenges that in the end really defines our future potential. And so there are many, many more things that make up a winning mindset, but the foundational 3, I would say, Calvin, would probably be those.
That's awesome. And that's just for me, as well as someone who's, you know, always had, I think, a really big interest in, you know, performance psychology, performance in life. It's just, it's really, really beautiful to hear. And I think all those things you said, I think a lot of people that listen to the podcast, that listen to the show are going to get a lot out of it. So, and it's even refreshing for me to hear and learn new things as well. So, like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really, really appreciate you for hopping on for a quick 30 minutes and you know, kind of talking about, you know, the ins and outs of performance mentally.
Calvin, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and hopefully anyone that hears this can at some level benefit. And it's just been a joy to connect with you today. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's it for today. But like I said, I really appreciate you hopping on, taking time out of your busy schedule, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks very much, Calvin. You can see that I'm over here just tucked up. I've got a little bit of a cold, so my voice is a little bit nasally, but hopefully that was useful for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. It really was. And like I said, just before I let you go, I'm a huge fan, and just as somebody who is plays the game, I've learned a lot from you, learned a lot from your book and everything. So I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing, and you're inspiring me to create this podcast. You know, the idea behind this is to get people to go after their goals and stuff. So yeah, couldn't be more grateful for your time. So
it's amazing what you're doing, and please do keep in touch. Let's stay connected together, and let me know where this can be found, and also your journey as well, because now we've met, I'm interested, and now I see the Instagram messages come in, I know who I'm speaking with.
All right, awesome. So I hope you rest up and get better from that cold, and have a great day.
Thank you, Calvin. Take care.
You as well.